Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Clicker virtual learning event hosted by Open Access. We're thrilled to have you with us today as we explore innovative tools and strategies that support learning and participation for all our students. We want to share with you our open access accessibility promise. We're committed to following the principles of UDL and to making this presentation and related materials as accessible as possible. A few of the strategies we'll be using today include simple background with high contrast text, digital and printed materials whenever available, shortened links, alternative text for images, multiple examples and non-examples, and opportunities and options for participation and feedback. So for those of you who may be new, I want to take a few moments to explain who we are at Open Access. Open Access is one of the statewide special education resource lead within the statewide system of support. We are grounded in the foundational belief that with access to quality instruction, all students can engage, actively participate, and learn with inclusive settings. What makes our project unique is that we highlight the importance of learning and participation for all through universal design for learning, assistive technology, and augmentative and alternative communication. Please bookmark our website to easily access free universal resources for educators and administrators. All designed to support the implementation of UDL, AT, or AAC. You can also click on the image to access our one-page flyer detailing our three-tiered approach to assisting LEAs and SELPAs statewide. Today, we've also included our open access and quick software website as a resource to you, and all of the links we will share with you today can be found on our home base document. So I want to start off by introducing the amazing presenter joining us on today's call. Carolyn Knowles is the Senior Education Consultant with Quick Software, and she brings a wealth of knowledge on how to support students' learning and independence. And our open access content leads, our team at Open Access includes Jennifer Wright. She's our augmentative and alternative communication lead. And Emily Desjardins and myself, Mimi Zinlick, we are the assistive technology and universal design for learning content lead. We really appreciate everyone for being with us today. So as we welcome you today to this learning journey, we want to start off our professional learning sessions with something we call an inclusive welcome. We didn't make this term up. It's one of the signature practice from CASEL, Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And there are many different ways you can do this practice. And today we're going to ask you which flower matches how you feel today. Are you 1, frustrated, 2, forlorn, 3, fearful, 4, fulfilled, 5, friendly, 6, fantastic, or any combination of those? Go ahead and type in the chat your floral feeling for today. Oh, I see a 4 from Rhonda. Thank you for sharing. You're like, ooh, a 6. Love that. 8. Thank you so much for, I'm feeling 6, floral, fantastic. I love it. Feel free to keep sharing as we kind of move along the slide deck. If you're interested in using an inclusive welcome in your classroom or presentation, the Ed Tomorrow website may be something you would like to explore. We've included that in our home base. It provides daily morning meeting slideshows sent to your email and that you can use right away. So now I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn, and she's going to go over the agenda for today and tell us all about the wonderful things that we can do with Clicker.
Thank you, Mimi. Okay, so I have our agenda up today, and I'm Carolyn. Just to introduce myself quickly, I wanted to talk about a little about what we're going to be going over today because I've moved some things around since I put this presentation together initially, and give you an idea of what we're going over. Specifically today, the Clicker apps for the iPad and the Chromebook. So we're going to start with what they are, what Clicker is, and what the actual apps themselves are, and go through the individual apps, Clicker Books, Clicker Talk, Clicker Writer. I have the Clicker board along with Writer. It's a core feature within the Writer app, but it is all in one app. We're going to look at support and accessibility options within each of the apps. And Learning Grids is the thing that I've moved. I've moved this up slightly earlier in the presentation. And then lastly, we're going to talk about impact. So what students and teachers that are using Clicker have to say. So we begin with what Clicker is. And Clicker is essentially a inclusive and accessible word processor. And on our Windows Max program, which we started looking at last week, we focused a lot on the document as the core within Clicker, where a lot of these main tools are held. Today, we're going to be looking at our iPad and Chromebook apps. And our iPad and Chromebook apps are Clicker Writer, Clicker Books, and Clicker Talk. These are a suite of apps for the iPad and Chromebook that provide students with access to the core supports that we have in our Windows and Mac software. And I wanted to note here while we're looking at this front screen that all platforms are interoperable with Clicker. So if you are opening or editing or working on an activity in the Windows Mac, you can open that activity, edit that activity in any of our other apps as well. Now, when we walk through our session today, we're going to go through the individual apps, but I just wanted to highlight that we did have a session last week talking about the Windows Mac software, so definitely check out the recording of that if you weren't here. If you were, there are going to be some places where we overlap because our goal here is to mirror support between our platforms as much as possible. But we're gonna be focusing on the apps today. So we start with the apps themselves. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 in place at the moment. We're constantly updating these with new tools and features and supports. But we're always in development to try to bring some new apps in as well for the future. We have Clicker Books, which is our bookmaking app, essentially. It provides a range of digital books that are pre-differentiated, focusing on reading and writing skills. Clicker Talk, which is sort of an alternative form of expression and demonstrating knowledge, not any reading and writing happening here. We're focusing more on speaking and listening skills. And Clicker Writer, which of course contains our writing grids that support a range of students with completing writing assignments. And it also includes our graphic organizer, like I talked about before. Now, I'll be honest and say that Clicker Writer is kind of the heart of the apps that we have on the iPad and the Chromebook. So there are the writing grids, like I said, and it also contains our Clicker board and the Clicker document that kind of houses a lot of the more familiar features if you've used Clicker in the past or accessed it previously. And I wanted to just, for a second, talk about learning grids. Now, again, if you were in our session last week, it focused heavily on learning grids, and our session today is also going to focus heavily on learning grids. This is a bank of elementary-focused resources that are included in Clicker. So to be clear, if you have any of our programs running on any device, you have access to this bank. And this provides access to a wide range. There's thousands of activities on there. That we call Clicker sets that are uploaded on a regular basis by our curriculum team. So there's going to be new topics, new activities added, usually monthly. So if you check in regularly, you'll see new things added in there. And the resources in Learning Grids are intended to provide a range of different supports, right? So there's books for reading, there's boards for planning, writing grids, speaking and listening activities. And our goal is always to provide as many options as possible in terms of topics and layouts to help with providing a starting point so that you don't have to make everything from scratch. Now, I want to be clear, we don't typically anticipate that kiddos are scrolling through learning grids looking at activities, but I wanted to point this out because if you end up in a situation where you only have access to an iPad for whatever reason, or you're working on a student's Chromebook, you still have access to jump in and download any of these resources. And I'm going to go into more about where these are located in a second. I just wanted to start there. And we're going to begin today in Clicker Books, similar to how we did last week, because I really like books as a way of starting a topic or starting a lesson, kind of launching something that we're going to be learning about. And Clicker Books are digital books that we have plenty available in Learning Grids, designed for targeted reading support. So there's a bunch of different pre-differentiated books to try to address the needs of different students, where students may be in terms of reading. All of these books include the more classic or like core features within Clicker. So speech support, text highlighting, picture support, and images if you've used any of our programs in the past. And this is actually out of date. There are more than 650 books. It's changed since I last uploaded this. So I'll pop into Learning Grids in a second, but I wanted to just start with the types of activities that are in Clicker Books. We have read-a-books, which typically include a picture and multiple sentences. This may vary depending on the topic. There may only be one. But the key difference with a read-a-book is that there's always a speak text icon. And I'm just going to pop Clicker Books over here to show you this. So with a read-a-book, we have our picture, we have our words, and we have a speak text icon down here. So whenever we see this megaphone icon, it'll read whatever's on screen.
The tortoise and the hare.
It'll highlight at the same time as we saw. And then we can use our arrows to navigate on through the book and look at the different pages that we have available in here. Now, with Clicker, the idea, of course, is that everything can be customized. Everything can always be changed. So in this particular option, I am not loving how tiny and small the speak text icon is, or the color, to be honest with you. So we can change that if we want to. I can select.
The tortoise was tired of being teased, so he challenged the hare to race.
Thank you, Clicker. I can select that icon, make it a little bigger, and then change the color also to make it more obvious. Just showing that we can always modify whatever we see in Clicker. Now, popping back into our presentation, other than a read-a-book, we also have Read It Yourself. And with a Read It Yourself book, we are trying to encourage students to read independently. So I'm actually going to pop into Learning Grids to download this. This is that bank I was talking about before. And our tortoise and the hare topic is right here under our Story Corner section. So if you have Clicker or want to try Clicker, you'd have access to these different books. And this is the Read It Yourself one we're going to go ahead and download right here. And you'll see this one, there's just a little bit less going on. We still have pictures, we still have words, but there's a simplified setup here. And there is no speak text icon. The idea with the Read It Yourself is that we're encouraging independent reading, so students can read themselves, but we can add that in if we want to. We could also add in a record and play button. So maybe we want students recording themselves, reading back into the book if we want to. And to do that, I would just click my little microphone icon up here, which will open our sound recorder. The hare made fun of the tortoise for being slow. And then it'll become a little speech bubble that tells us that we have something recorded in there. So when we're out in our view mode, our run mode, we can click or tap on that speech bubble as many times as we need to hear it read to us. The hare made fun of the tortoise for being slow. And then keep moving on throughout our book. Now, the last type of book in Clicker Books, how many times do I say books today, is a make a book. Again, just popping into Learning Grids to look at these. And we actually have two here in this particular option. This Make a Book 2 is a nice example of a book where we have no text. There's nothing written. There's nothing that the student is writing here. This is all recording. So the student is probably retelling here or just talking about the story. But I'm going to open this Make a Book 1 right above. And I wanted to show this one because this has sections where the student can actually do writing themselves. They can complete this section where it says add text. We can click our pencil and select that icon to do writing. And in this case, this particular book has a word bank built into the book to help us with writing. So we can use any of these words to write about our book. And anything in Clicker is always going to be speech supported with a right click.
Cheering. Win.
If you're on an iPad and don't have access to a right click or are not right clicking, this blue button here called the sound shift will act as that right click rehearsal if you don't have access to a mouse or if you're on like a smart board.
Finish line.
It'll function exactly the same way and it's still text highlighting as you move throughout. Now, like I said before, I wanted to talk about the support and accessibility options, like where all of that is located in each app. Locationally, they're the same, but the menus are just going to look a little different depending on the app itself based on what's available. Settings are always in this little gear icon up here in the top right. And from within this menu, we can make some basic changes to the app. So maybe we want a keyboard with more space in it. This show clicks and taps is what this little red dot is that you've been seeing. Obviously great for presenting, but also I found can be really helpful for kiddos that want to see the clicking or the tapping, or maybe you're on a smart board. Speech will let us change the speech feedback that we've been seeing throughout this presentation. So maybe we want it to be slower or faster. We could just drag the bar to initiate that. And then the voice itself, I'm using Ella, but there are a ton of different speech engines that you can download in Clicker, different ages, different genders to match whichever student you might be working with. Suggestions is just going to change the way the predictor and the keyboard actually look in terms of what options we're seeing. And then I just wanted to highlight this picture section at the back, nothing too exciting in here, but this is where our CricPix 2 library is located. So just to mention that if you have Clicker and you're noticing images look funny, you might have to pop in here and download it. That's the only thing that I would suggest, is making sure this says remove and not download. Now, in terms of alternative access in Clicker Books, and really all of the Clicker apps, they're all located in this icon up here. And this menu is going to look exactly the same in all of them. I'm going to highlight it for you, but the functionally and locationally is exactly the same. Our Clicker apps are switch accessible, single and two switch accessible. And you like turn that on, you activate it by selecting these options on the left-hand side. And then from within these, there are different settings we might want to adjust. So how fast is the scan moving? What exactly does the scan look like? Do we want it making a sound while that process is happening? And just slightly different options for the two switch scanning in Clicker Books. Again, all located in the same place, right up here in this icon. Now, I personally like starting with Clicker Books as entering into whatever topic we're going to be talking about, but I've seen this used a whole bunch of different ways as like a report after a topic that we might be working on, or a unit, especially where students are creating themselves. So I want to be clear, you can totally make your own. I'm just focusing on the Learning Grids resources for the session that we're working on today. Popping back into Clicker here, we've done all our books and our support options. And now we're going to talk about Clicker Talk. Now, Clicker Talk is different than some of our other apps, like I mentioned before. This is not so much about writing or reading. This is more focused on speaking and listening skills. And Clicker Talk gives students the opportunity to explore new vocabulary, demonstrate knowledge, rehearse ideas before writing. And these can also be a nice way to take the pressure off of writing for a moment and focus more on verbal skills. If maybe we're intimidated by a document or something like that, this is a nice alternate. Again, we have 3 types of talk sets that we're going to look at today, starting with a tell the story activity. And I'm sticking with our tortoise and the hare topic. And I covered this last time in our session last week. I really love tell the story activities personally. These support learners with retelling stories or sequencing events. So we have pictures from the Clicker book that we were just reading about, Tortoise and the Hare. And in this case, the student is going into each picture and then talking about what's happening in each picture, retelling the story each step of the way using the voice recorder icon down here. This is going to function exactly the same as we are before. The student's just retelling the story as we go through. And then it becomes a little speech bubble down there again, letting us know that there's stored recording. And that recording will go onto the main page also. So ideally, at the end, as the student continues recording, you'll have all of these recordings in the correct order stored right down here. And again, I really like these. There's a lot of these like retelling sequencing activities in Clicker that do a really great job of corresponding with the books that are available in Clicker Books. And I wanted to, while we were here, sort of show the other topics, other ways of using Clicker outside of just the stories. So I'm popping into Learning Grids and just showing you this looks exactly the same in both places. The only difference here is that we're only seeing talk sets because we're in Clicker Talk, but you have access to the library, the same topics in all of them, so that you can see Tortoise and the Hare is still in the same place. And in this particular case, we only have this one tell the story activity in here preloaded for Learning Grid. So this is where I wanted to show some of the other options. If we were working on something totally different, maybe a science activity like volcanoes, let's say, I can search for a keyword in the top to pull up different topics within that keyword. We have a talk about activity here, a different type of activity in Clicker. Now with a talk about activity, this doesn't have the same sequencing. Really here, students are simply responding to pictures, responding to images. And again, you can use these a bunch of different ways, but with this one in particular, this makes sense to me maybe as prior knowledge. So before we actually do any like reading or writing, we're just collecting knowledge ahead of time. We have a picture of volcanoes, and then we have, what is this, 5, 6, couldn't count for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yep. voice recorder options at the bottom. So in this case, the student would be in different bubbles recording different things that they may know about volcanoes. Magma is very hot. I don't have a whole lot of knowledge about volcanoes, but hopefully the students do. And again, it looks exactly the same. So the idea here would be that we're talking about magma in this speech bubble. Maybe in the red one, we're talking about types of volcanoes. Maybe in the gray one, we're talking about where we know volcanoes are in the world. But the student here is really just talking about the picture, just to show another type of talk set. We have, unfortunately, it's on spiders, which I apologize for. But this is another talk about activity. So, oh God, which of these is worse? Let's do the web. This one's not as bad. This one is a series of pictures the students are talking about instead of just one. Again, talking about types of webs. This might be one we do after reading about or doing some sort of initial start on spiders, for example, functionally all the same. But the student here is really responding to images. So I just kind of wanted to show some options there. And then the last type of talk set is a listen and say. Now, I like some of the ones that we have for like sight words, for example, pre-reading sight words. These with a listen and say, we have words and sometimes words and pictures, depending on the topic. In this case, it's just words listed on the front that we can always click or tap on to hear read aloud.
4, 2.
Our arrow down here will kind of let us start. And then we have the word and or our picture blown up large. And then again, another space to record. So really here, a student is listening to the word and then recording themselves saying the word. Great for learning sight words, heart words, or like key vocabulary from a story, maybe. There are tons of different options for these types of listen and say activities and talk sets in general. I find that typically talk sets they fit really nicely as like a follow-up or a reinforcement after a book or after some sort of initial launch before writing, but they don't necessarily need to be used that way. And again, I'm trying to show in Learning Grids the range of resources here. So we only had one talk set for Tortoise in the Hare, but there are lots and lots of other ones in here that we might choose to use on different topics. And you can always explore those in the drop downs at the top as well if you wanted to check out what we have for plants, for example, or weather or other activities that we might be working on. There's a whole bunch of different activities in here. Now, I promised I'd be going over support and accessibility for each of them. So we have that for Clicker Talk as well. We've seen speech support, and obviously picture support is a really key component in Talk because so much of it is responding to images and pictures. So again, this has the same library. But I always like to mention that you can add external pictures or your own pictures from other libraries as well. So if you have pictures of a student's things or things in your classroom or a school or something like that that you want, or maybe it's something really specific like Legos or Shrek or Power Rangers or something like that, you can use those pictures as well. So you're not limited to what's in Clicker. And with the speech support, like we saw, there's always additional options for voices, the speed of the voice. It's always going to highlight the text as it's reading. And the switch accessibility is consistent in Clicker Talk also. So again, all your settings are here. There are just fewer of them in Talk, but again, we're not doing writing here. So the options for editing are a little bit different. And then our switch accessibility is in the same place right up here. Now we're moving right on along to Clicker Writer. And Clicker Writer is the core, the bread and butter of the apps for the iPad, if you will. Because this is where the Clicker document is housed with all of again, I've been talking about these core support features, word prediction, picture support, spell check, voice notes, and speech feedback. That's all kind of housed in the Clicker document. And we looked at this last week in the document section in our WinMac presentation. In Clicker Writer, we also have our writing grids, our sentence sets, connect sets, and word banks that we're going to be looking at. And then our Clicker board graphic organizer, which again has all these same supports, and then some templates that we're going to look at as well. Now I'm going to pop into Clicker Writer. We have our document here, this word processor portion. And this is where, again, all of those core features are located up here at the top, this top toolbar. So we know by now that if I type something into Clicker, it's going to read aloud when I punctuate.
My name is Carolyn.
And it'll highlight, of course, all that stuff that we know. We can have word prediction on right here. So I can go ahead and type a sentence. And I also have speech support here
Is
with a right click, or again, we can tap our sound shift
yeah.
to rehearse if we don't have that right click. Now, I have to point out that it did try to correct me, but I am purposely not taking its correction. It is trying.
It was a cloudy day.
Now, Clicker is making it sound pretty similar. I will give it that. But the point of the speech feedback, a nice plus of it, is that it will let us know that something doesn't sound quite right. And of course, we have that universal squiggle, that red underline that lets us know something is spelled incorrectly. The predictor becomes the spell checker, which is of course speech supported.
Cloudy.
And then we can go ahead and make our change that way. And I wanted to note also that if we have our keyboard open, our on-screen keyboard, which we may very well need on the iPad, the predictor just sort of sticks on top of the keyboard, trying to make the most of the screen space, if you will. It'll go right up on top. Functionally, it's exactly the same. Oop. Wanted to hide that. We also have, and this is actually newer. This is an update. We have our voice input icon here. Now, if you were at last week's session, we talked about voice notes, and I'm going to talk about that right now. Voice notes will store recordings, spoken word, right into a document. So I see this used a lot for recording of directions ahead of time. Please write 5 sentences about the tortoise and the hare, whatever you're working on. And it'll pop that recording kind of like a bullet onto the side of the screen. And the students can click and listen to that as many times as they need, or maybe they're using this for brainstorming themselves, talking about what they want to write about if they know that ahead of time and want to listen to it later on. But a very exciting thing that's been added is that our dictation option has been added up here in this menu. It was a little bit hidden before it was there, but it's much more prominent now. So if you're interested in using dictation right into the Clicker document, you can turn it on and it will dictate directly into the document as you see here. And then close right out of it to finish. So that's a newer location for that, at least. I wanted to make sure I showed that. Our formatting icon is exactly what we would expect to see in a word processor. Do we need the font a certain size, combinations of color for the font in the background? Maybe we want it listed as, listed a certain way. Different options for modifying the way that the document looks and appears here that I wanted to make sure I pointed out. And then our picture icon at the end, which has this picturize option. Now, this is really cool. This will automatically input pictures into your writing at the end. So any words, that correspond with images in our library, it'll automatically pop those in. And I want to note that if you have Clicker and you're not seeing things like picturize or this dictation feature, you might just need to update the app, just for anyone in the future or watching this later on. They are there. You just might need to update your app. We can also remove pictures from here if that helps. So if we're writing with pictures during the actual process, but we want to take those out, we have the option to do that as well. And that's located right up here. Now, I mentioned these briefly, these grid tools, and forgive me, I am going to show us our sentence set, but right now I'm just talking about these here. These grid tools are really for iPad users. And I just want to point that out because I'm on a Chromebook right now. You can see my mouse moving around. But if we're using an iPad and we don't have a delete button right here on the screen, we can delete. We can go to a new line. We've seen our sound shift.
Made.
So we have rehearsal, and then we can flip back and forth to the keyboard. You could totally use this on a Chromebook too, or even on any touch screen, like an interactive whiteboard or something like that. But especially for iPads, where I'm taking the word click for granted, we don't have that. You have grid tools here to basically enable you to do that. And our sentence set is already open, so that's a great segue into our writing grids. And we're starting with sentence sets again, just like last time. Now, I'm going to take my time going through this section because this is where, like I said, Writer is really the bread and butter of the app. So I'm going to go through the grids. We start with sentence sets, which are our baseline, basically, our most emergent support. And this is intended to support simple sentence building. So these are single sentence outcome grids. All the words are provided, and students are inputting words one by one to create their sentences. We do have picture support, as we see over here on the left. And we have tons of different ways that we can modify these. So in this particular example, we have a model,
The hare made fun of the tortoise for being slow.
which of course is going to read to us as we know. And then the student is clicking to put their words into the document.
Tortoise.
Right click for rehearsal. It's going to read again. Sorry, guys.
The hare made fun of the tortoise for being slow.
Now, this particular option, again, this came right from Learning Grids. We may not want this combination of settings, right? So for some students, maybe having a visual model that is constant and that we can hear the words in sentence order, maybe that's perfect. Maybe that's just right. But we can edit, that edit feature is down here on the bottom, and change the way that this looks. So at the top, we can change any specific wording. I'm only showing you this to show that we can change the wording. I will change you back to tortoise because it's not the turtle and the hare. But you can make changes to the sentence itself up top if you want to shorten it or change specific wording. Now, our model and word order options are really where we can make some specific customizations. I did show this last time, but I'm going to show it again. An option for errorless writing, view and copy, and guided order will make an error-free, errorless writing activity. I always like to show this. This is a great starting point, especially for those really emergent writers. So if you need something completely error-free, you can do that. And some students may need that, but maybe others are, maybe we want them to just hear a model and not see anything and have the words be randomly arranged. We can do that. We can ask the cells themselves to be made larger, create a wider target area, or a larger target area, excuse me. We can change the color if we want to, and we can add more picture support in here. Sentence sets will almost always have some kind of picture on the left, but maybe we want to add a picture for hair. We can do that. And Clicker will search the image library for whatever word is in that cell. So I definitely recommend putting your words in first. And we can do that for tortoise as many times as we need. You can add pictures for whatever whatever requires a picture. Now you'll notice that these don't match. These are different. And if we know that this setup, this model is going to work best for a particular student, this setting down here applies, or this, excuse me, icon applies settings to all grids, is going to take all of these settings that we just put in place and paste them basically onto the other sentences in our grid, in our set. The only thing that you'll need to add are specific pictures for individual words. If you have that happening, that'll be the only thing. It will mirror all other settings. And so this activity looks completely different now. We have a model that we can hear.
The tortoise challenged the hare to race.
And then we have our words completely out of order. These random arranged, I believe. Yeah, randomly arranged. And I wanted to show this to emphasize that there may be students where we're using error-free. And in the same class, we might have students that are using something more like this. You can also change this on the fly. If you download something from Learning Grids and it is nowhere near what you need, you can pretty quickly modify it to better meet the needs of the learners that you're working with. So I just wanted to focus on that to make sure that I showed that. Our next type of grid are called connect sets. And these are different than sentence sets in that they provide a lot more choice for the writer. There's a lot more options for how many sentences we want to make, how complex the sentence is. And there are a huge variety of these in terms of layout. You can see even just from these examples here, we have a picture bank, we have phrases that we can put together to build our sentences. Now, in Clicker Writer, Learning Grids is in the same place. And again, I'm going to the exact same location to our tortoise and the hare resources to show you the connect set that's in here. This particular one has a picture bank at the start, which is kind of similar to the resources we looked at last week, and then some grids behind it for building sentences. You can change these. These are a little older, so the color coding is a little freehand and fabulous. we can tone that down if we want. Or make it more specific if a student needs something specific type of color coding, excuse me. But again, the layouts of connect sets vary wildly. So I'm going to show you something on a different topic. Let's say insects. To show you that this is a Connect set, but a completely different layout, much simpler, much fewer options. So the real key difference with a Connect set is that you have more than one sentence outcome, whereas a sentence set would say this is a bee. We have many options here for, well, not many, we have three, but we have more than one option for what this sentence could possibly be. And again, we're kind of thinking of this as a progression. So maybe we're starting with the sentence sets and moving to the Connect sets, but we're totally cognizant that some students might just be at this point starting. And again, the layout of these vary wildly. So if you're interested in Connect sets, I definitely recommend just downloading a couple off of Learning Grids to see what some of them look like, because there are a bunch of different kinds. That brings us into our word banks. And of course, alphabetical word banks, exactly like we would expect. There are topic tab word banks like this one, where there's specific vocabulary on tabs within a word bank that based on whatever topic we're working on. We have picture word banks that include words and pictures. And again, all of these can be found in Learning Grids. You can ask it to just show you a particular type of activity. So if you just want to see word banks, or if you just want to see sentence sets, it'll show you all of those specifically. And even these vary in layout. This is a word bank with a sentence starter and some various sentence endings and pictures, a little different than the ones we've looked at so far. And I like to show these because, again, they're kind of an in-between. It's not just an alphabetical word bank. If we're moving from a Connect set, we want a little less support, but we're still not at like that fully independent stage of writing. This might be a really nice option. And there are also some writing frames. If you search frame or writing frames or anything like that, you'll get a bunch of these that will come up. And these are sentence starters. Again, classed as word banks in our system, but really just open-ended sentence starters, a variety of options. This particular one is on investigation. Yes, investigation. So investigating something. But the point is that it doesn't tell you what you're investigating. You can use this for whatever you may be investigating in class, or like a science experiment that you're looking into, something like that. This one is only one page. So maybe in this case, we're trying to create a couple of sentences or a paragraph on a specific investigation. I'm thinking of science experiment right now that we're working on in class. Or we could use, this is the one I wanted to look at, the book review frame. Now, again, I'm going to tell you this color, it's hurting my eyes. I have to change it. But we can do that really quickly in Clicker. And now it's not quite as bright. I really like this writing frame. Again, sentence starters, but different tabs talking about a book that we might have read in class. So introducing our review of the book, talking about the actual storyline in the books, the summary of what happened. And usually these frames that have more than one tab will have like a generic word section in the end about the book review or about writing a letter, whatever we may be working on. But I wanted to show these in this session just to show again, the range in the types of word banks, but all the sets that are in Clicker, because where our last session, we stuck really closely to our one topic, it was Jack and the Beanstalk last week. With these, I wanted to show that you don't just have to do that. It's not just books and responding to books. There are tons and tons of other activities and even more open-ended activities that we could be looking at also. And that brings us into our Clicker board. Now, the Clicker board is a graphic organizer. So I'll say what I said last time, which is that these are open-ended. They're popular and flexible because you're not necessarily locked into a specific layout, and you have the ability to kind of create whatever you may want based on the topic that you're looking at, or the topic that you're working on, excuse me. And these, what I mean by that is you can use any of these more like open-ended templates that we have in Learning Grid, or not in Learning Grids, in our system. These are layouts, but there's no content in these. You can input whatever content you may be working on. You can also create something completely from scratch. I've seen people make matching activities in these. You can really do whatever you want. But you could also download from Learning Grids templates that are more on a topic, and this can vary. This one, for example, at the bottom is like a 5-finger retell of a story that we might have read in class. This one at the top is, what am I doing today? some sort of scheduling, or what we're working on. What am I doing right now? What am I doing next? What am I doing then? The support within the board is, again, very similar to what we would expect from Clicker. We have speech support, the word prediction, the spell checker. We can input voice notes, pictures, as we can see. This presentation that we've been looking at today, this whole thing has actually been a Clicker board. So you can make pretty much whatever you want in here. And I have Writer open here just to show you an example of one that I picked from Learning Grids. This is one of our story planner activities. So we have all the different elements of a story, and kiddos can fill this in either based on in a reportive way after we've done some reading, or maybe they're planning a story that they're planning to write themselves independently. I've seen this one used in a couple of different ways. And again, in Learning Grids, we can ask it to just show us some of the boards if we want to see what those look like. I cannot get away from the spiders today. They just uploaded a whole range of activities on spiders. So there's tons of these in here too. Fossils. And again, you see these all look completely different. That's intentional. Again, trying to provide as wide a range of activities. And again, some of these you might like the way that they look. Like maybe you like the way that this Holes character like deep dive on Stanley Yelnats looks, but maybe you're not doing Holes in class. Maybe you're doing Charlotte's Web or something else. You can use this layout and modify it to be on something else completely different. I don't have Wilbur specifically, but we can put a cute little piggy in there, and we can make this on a completely different topic if we want. And again, the point of this session compared to last session was to show a bit more range in terms of the topics that are in Learning Grids. And again, what kiddos might need when they're accessing Clicker, what students might need. We know that you know your students best, so we're trying to provide as many options and exploratory starting points for you, staff and teachers, educators, and the planning process. So you don't have to create things from scratch. You certainly can, but you don't need to. Now, as far as settings in Clicker, the settings menu in Clicker, Writer, definitely the beefiest of the three apps that we've looked at today, because we're dealing with writing. We're dealing with a lot more like speech support and more specific settings than like Talk, for example, where this was a lot slower or a lot smaller, excuse me. The general tab is all your general stuff. Maybe you want the on-screen keyboard to look different. Maybe you want the document to be a different background color and font color. All of this can be changed here. The speech tab will let you change not only how fast the speech is reading and the actual speech engine itself, of course, but the highlight color. So it's been in red this whole time, but if that is not an option, I've had some people say that red is not what they wanted to highlight in for whatever reason for a particular student. Or to be fair, if the text is red or the background is red, that's not going to work. So you can always change that to be something else. And then this Speak As You Write is something I get asked about quite often. So this is changing how often Clicker reads. As we've seen today, it will obviously read whenever you right click anything, but it defaults to reading back upon punctuation. Maybe you want it reading every word as a student is making selections from the grid. You can ask Clicker to do that. You can also turn off that speak on right click if for whatever reason you do not want it reading back to you, or if you're like working on editing something, you can turn that off so it's not talking at you the whole time. Tools and controls is going to show or not show these tools in the toolbar like it says at the bottom. So for example, maybe there's a particular student that you do not want to have dictation or voice notes. You can get rid of that automatically. You see it literally vanished from this top toolbar here. Maybe for other kiddos, we don't want them to have the predictor. Maybe for some students, we're trying to move away from word prediction. We can turn that off. And this show clicks and taps is, again, these red dots that you've been seeing throughout this presentation. I needed to make sure I can see my mouse personally. But again, I've seen this turned on for using in a whole class, like an interactive whiteboard, or for certain students that might just benefit from seeing where they're clicking or tapping. Suggestions refers to the word predictor and the spell checker. So do we want to see fewer options than 5? Or maybe I had mine very large, but maybe we want it on medium because we're showing more options. Maybe we do not want Clicker capitalizing names or capitalizing the first letter of sentences. Maybe you don't want spell check at all. All of this can be customized depending on the goals of the particular student that you're working with or goals that you have. And then again, pictures is going to give us some options for how we're working with pictures in our writing. So the send picture with text, that means that like in our tortoise and the hare example, we had hare the word and hare the picture right on top of each other. If we don't want that picture going in, we can turn it off. And Picturize will let us write with words as I type into the document. It'll also let us put pictures into the predictor and the spell checker. So I could say, I like to eat pizza.
I like to eat pizza.
And you'll see we're now getting pictures in the predictor also. I have to be honest, I didn't have another sentence lined up. I just wanted to show you that there were pictures in the predictor. But the nice thing about this particular like picture support in Writer, this is something newer that was always available in our WinMax software. It's something people have been asking for a while to enhance the types of picture support that's in Clicker, and that's now available here. So again, the settings for that, just to show that, are in this back picture section here. If you want to turn on or off any sort of picture support, this is where you would do it. Whew, we're doing good, guys. We're going through a lot. Now, we've gone through our board, we've gone through our settings, and then, oh yes, and then the accessibility. Again, I'm just highlighting that this is located in the same place. It's right up here. Now, I also showed this in our WinMax section, super keys, which I do want to show here. Excuse me. This is an kind of like a filter for the keyboard, an alternative way of using the on-screen keyboard. This is again within that accessibility section. I have it on for my keyboard now, which means that it will look like this. Super keys chunks the on-screen keyboard into larger target areas to hopefully make selecting easier if we're searching with a finger, or to make using alternative access a little bit faster. So rather than scanning the entire top row to get to the H, it'll just do this cluster and then this cluster. So if I click anywhere in this middle one, it'll become larger for me. And then it's hopefully easier for me to select which letter I want from this cluster, the letter T, and then it'll shrink back down. And again, with Clicker, you can layer the supports here. So we could have our predictor on, and it'll show us different options, slightly different options, depending on what cluster of the keyboard that we're in. Not always something that people know we have in Clicker super keys. Again, that's located right up here. Now, I will say with the access menu, anything you turn on here, it will stay that way. So if you're using Clicker and you're like, why the heck is it scanning? Or why does my keyboard look like this? You might have turned a setting on in access. You just have to go in and turn it off. It'll go right back to normal as you see here. Okie dokie. We went over our accessibility options in Clicker Writer. Now, the last thing that I wanted to share was some input from educators, and I also have some student work examples that I wanted to show, because I have to be honest, if anyone's using Clicker out there, please send me like examples of things that students are making with Clicker. It's the best day in the office when we all get to see what students are actually doing and writing. It's the best. And I wanted to include this one because it's about Clicker books. This was a special education teacher that I worked with in Indiana. And when I met with her, she was working with students in a special education classroom, a special needs classroom, and at all different levels of need. Everyone had different requirements. And for in Samantha's class, they were doing a unit on birds. They were working on birds. I have to be honest, I'm scared of birds. So I was a little, I wish it was something else, but these are really cute. And Samantha and her students opted to use Clicker books as their end of topic, end of lesson like project. So these were books, but they were kind of reports on whichever bird the student had chosen. So these are just some screenshots. But I also have, this is a real, like a live file of a book that a student created. And you can see these are external pictures that they put in. They did this writing themselves. And these were not students who were doing a whole lot of writing before. So it was really, I was thrilled to see this in books, especially like these were completely created from scratch. And again, a nice way to sort of show you that this is a very simple layout. You know, And this looks quite different than the example books. Student A, they were very colorful in their selection. Our Crow student definitely went for a more muted color palette, but these were all self-created. These layouts, these color options, these pictures were all chosen by the students, and they did this writing themselves. And we even have recordings of the students actually reading the work back into Clicker. I just loved this. I was so happy when I saw this. And again, in this particular case, when I was working with Samantha, she talked about the fact that all of her kiddos needed something different. They were all needing different supports, different resources to use Clicker and to do writing. So I really wanted to show this, and again, give kind of an overview of the apps. This session should pretty closely mirror what we looked at last week. If you didn't see both, you should be okay. But again, I hope I've showed that our goal is to just provide as much as possible, as many resources, as many layouts, as many topics as possible, to make writing accessible for students, and also try to make things a little bit easier for you guys also in the planning process. And that is it for me. I will pass it back to Mimi.
Mimi, you're muted.
Thanks, Lori. What
Yeah,
else
no
I
worries.
really appreciate Carolyn sharing all of that information with us. I love all the accessibility features and the way we can customize it to meet all the different needs of our student. It's been really wonderful. We've kind of saved a little bit of time for any questions you guys may have for Carolyn. She knows this product so well. If you want to take a moment to ask her anything, feel free to unmute or type your question in the chat. We'll spend like a minute or so gathering some of that. Feel free to kind of type your questions if you do have them, and we'll just kind of continue with the slide deck and we'll catch them if they come up. So as we end our session today, we want to take a moment to kind of bridge the learning we today with our next step. What's one takeaway you want to try and why? Feel free to unmute or share in the chat as well. Oh, great. Rhonda says she wants to explore more about the Clicker offerings. It's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Your feedback is very important to us. Please take a moment to complete the survey or our session today. You can scan the QR code, click on the link from the slide deck, or we'll drop the link in the chat as well. And their feedback really helps us kind of tailor our offerings to you guys. We also want to invite you to join our free interactive monthly inclusive learning circles to explore UDL, AT, and AAC in action. These communities of practice are open to all educators, and each month we rotate on the topic of UDL, AT, and AAC to expand our knowledge and share best practices. The flyer and registration link can be accessed on this slide or on our home-based document. So we hope to see you guys at our inclusive learning circle. You can also follow us on various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. So please make sure you follow us. And lastly, we just really want to say thank you and appreciate Carolyn sharing all the wonderful knowledge on Clicker, as well as the participant kind of sharing your time with us today. If you have any question, we've kind of left our email address and contact others. Feel free to get in touch with us.